Call the meeting to order. It's a little bit before 4:45, but we'll start the meeting. Roll call.
Our city clerk stepped away.
Oh.
Excuse me. All right. Mayor Yanish.
Here.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Christensen.
Here.
Councilmember Amon.
Here.
Councilmember Nelson. Here. Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Dockin.
Here.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Here.
Councilmember DeBleek.
Here.
There are 8 present, 1 absent. Nope. There are 9 present.
Just came in. Okay. We got 9 present. Thank you. I think we'll,
Started early.
seeing no one in the audience but our reporter, I think we'll bypass public forum and we'll go into review the recommendation for external services. I have a note here that says external services focuses on public works, planning and development, facilities maintenance and engineering, and wastewater treatment. And we'll start discussion with those in mind.
For the council's benefit, there is a summary memo. This all follows along with the organizational study and the final report that was given by Richard Fersman of Brimray Fersman back in late June. The council opted to have a workshop, and up on the screen you will see screenshots of the same organizational charts that are also in the information before you on the 2 options. There were 2 options for external services that were presented. Option A, which creates a Community Services Director, was formerly called Director of External Services in one of the plan iterations, but it would combine the planning and development services, public works services, facility services, wastewater services, and engineering services into one larger super department or division, might be a better term for that, and put them all under one director. And then there would be mid-level managers at the 2nd level of planning and development, public works, facilities, wastewater, and city engineering. The report also recommended the creation of a facilities maintenance coordinator or supervisor. That position is also shown on that chart above. There has since been some suggestion from some council members that the council may wish to discuss further, which would be to restore the assistant engineer position and make that also responsible for facilities maintenance. That would be another option. And in this option, it also recommends filling the engineering technician position, which is on that chart listed as a surveyor position, but it is an engineering tech position, also / surveyor. That position is currently filled by a contract with Bollig Engineering. Option B, which is the next chart. Whoops, I can do that, I think, from here. Let me see. There we go. Option B, which is was also looked at, and this option would really kind of continue the structure that the city's had in place for over 20 years. And this would be a public works director would be hired, or a public works director / city engineer would be hired. A wastewater treatment, the technicians, engineering services, and the surveyor and public works would all end up under the city engineer / public works director. In that position. In both scenarios, it was recommended that the city consider a GIS position. Right now, the city is in the process of exploring some options for GIS. One is looking at how we could collaborate maybe with Candy-Ojai County and develop a countywide GIS system that would be robust. The Candy-Ojai County does have the makings of that and the structure of that, and that is somewhat done by contract right now from Candy-Ojai County, and so we're looking at that. So at this time, I'm not recommending that we would create a GIS position. The recommendation from staff is to was to restructure as outlined in option A, with the position of whoops, sorry about that. Getting used to doing this. Would be to restructure in much like it is outlined under option A, but instead of having the facilities maintenance coordinator position, the recommendation would be to look at whether that should be actually an assistant engineer position, and then have that assistant engineer take on additionally the duties of facilities coordinator, which would accomplish much the same thing.
Thank you. Charlene, what do we hope to accomplish here today?
Well, I think that council asked from a staff perspective, I think we'd like some direction so that we can begin to move forward with some of the vacant positions. We've held off on some of these vacancies as we went through the organizational structure process. So we have stretched the staff about as far as we can in terms of waiting for this to occur. We've had some vacancies, such as the city engineer, that have been vacant for approximately a year now. And we went through this restructuring process before filling those positions to determine if there might be other options to filling the positions as we had before. And so that would be the direction we're looking for.
Thank you. Do we have comments from the council? Councilman DeBlee.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Option B is, you say, is pretty much what we've currently been operating under?
Option B is very much what the city is currently operated under. It included a suggestion for a GIS position, and then it also would add a facilities maintenance. It called out the need for facilities maintenance. One of the pieces in the study that was identified as kind of a gap in the public works area was someone who's sort of clearly designated to manage and oversee the city's facilities. It's done in a somewhat diffused way, which work is getting done. The buildings are being cleaned. The buildings are getting maintained. But as you look at our capital needs going forward, as you look at our infrastructure and our buildings, there's a lot of deferred maintenance that needs to be dealt with and addressed and managed. And the thought is that perhaps having somebody whose job or a portion of their jobs is really dedicated to facilities maintenance and overseeing that would be more effective.
Councilman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Charlene, if under option B, would the assistant engineer / facilities maintenance, that wouldn't fall under the public works superintendent, would it, or would it?
It would probably, if it was an assistant engineering position, it would fall under the city engineer. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, and to me, that makes sense to have an assistant engineer also responsible for our facilities. So we have one person that can kind of look after all of those things. Okay, thank you.
I may have missed it, but could you tell me the difference between option B and what we have now?
Option B is very much what we have now. It would be adding a position that would be dedicated to facilities maintenance, and you could add that in one of two ways, which would be, as it's listed here, would be a subset of public works, and it would be a lower level facilities maintenance. It might be more of a foreman position. I think the recommendation that I'm suggesting would be actually to elevate it more to an assistant engineer position in either scenario. And then that person would be responsible for some engineering work and some engineering functions, as well as responsible for the overall coordination of facilities maintenance.
So
what's the recommendation that staff is saying? You said staff.
My recommendation is to restructure along, pardon me here,
Option
the
A
mouse,
or B?
along option A, which would be to create a larger division which would combine the external services of public works, facilities, wastewater, engineering, and planning and development.
And what's the rationale behind that, or what's the reason?
The rationale behind that is that those external services, it would be one coordinated division with a common mission. The folks would work better as a team, and we would gain some efficiencies and some coordination of efforts in that regard.
But we'd be creating a new position.
In this scenario, the new position that would be created would be for the facilities maintenance. What this proposes is creating a community services director, but that would reduce the number of folks that we have for planning and development.
As far as the job description of the community services director, aren't we kind of putting the cart, we're trying to make a decision which way to go, but we don't have a job description exactly of what this person is authorized to do and or what the responsibilities are. We can see the flow chart, but we're talking about creating a new position without even discussing it and having a contract that shows what the responsibilities of that person is. I mean, we're trying to add something to the budget, but we don't know specifically what those operations and what that person's responsibilities are. I mean, wouldn't it be better to have, before we're trying to make an addition to hire, shouldn't we know what we're hiring them for before we go ahead and make a recommendation?
I would think so. Councilmember Nelson?
Councilmember Nelson. Hey, hey. I look at this as accepting a structure. Out of that structure would come the need to have a job description to do that. So you're not creating, I mean, you're looking at a division, you're looking at the supervision. There's still going to need to be a job description. It's not creating, I mean, you can't, you need to have that line in place in order to create a job description. So I think we're looking at, is this the direction that we should go and why we should do that? And then out of that would come the creation of a job description.
Well, that's one way of doing it, but normally you come up with a list of needs of what this person is going to be doing, what the responsibilities are, and where you're going to tuck them into the flow chart.
I think this pretty much explains what the responsibilities are.
Well, somewhat, but you know, you're taking what responsibilities? Before we had the city engineer, since I've been on the council, took care of all that.
Why is it any different it's just a different...
You're creating another new position to be over the city engineer. Who knows better about facilities and operations than a city engineer? I don't think anybody's qualified to do that unless they're another city engineer person that's going to apply for it. So I don't understand this. It seems backwards to me.
Councilman Anderson has a comment?
I think what we're looking to do is try to decide if we want to go this direction or not. And if we do want to go this direction, then we do need to refine a lot of things. But one comment on who knows better than the city engineer? Nobody. So it seems to me we should have a city engineer that can be doing the engineering work rather than administrative and supervisory, although there is still some supervisory. I would like to see the city engineer do more engineering and less administrative things. But again, I think we need to just tell staff, which way do we want to go so we can get this cart going?
Well, please correct me if I'm wrong, Council and Mayor, but in the past, the assistant city engineer took care of a lot of the smaller day-to-day operations, organizational, and the city engineer was free to do his work other than putting together final reports or drawings and things like that. So what are we really creating by having an external officer? It doesn't make sense. It worked fine all these years, and it's been working. We used to have a knock-up team there, and they left for their own personal reasons, but it worked.
We've not had an assistant city engineer since I've been with the city for 2 years. I mean, that position was eliminated previously in the budget, and so the organization we've had for the last 2 years has been where the city engineer is also the public works director. Right. That requires the city engineer spend predominantly most of that time supervising staff, managing staff, and not engineering.
But was the job getting done before, when we had an assistant and a full-time city engineer?
I would have to say that there's probably a reason why it was cut. I don't know what the reason was.
Positions were vacated.
The position was vacant.
Position was vacant, okay. Any further discussion? Councilman Docker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, the staff said they're looking for direction, and I guess I'm looking for information. I think we need to have a more defined and clear mission statement, and I agree with Steve. We need job descriptions, and we need duties and responsibilities. Because what we're about here is providing services to citizens in our community, 10,000 of them that can vote in a timely and efficient manner. And so we need to focus on, Steve, as you said, what's the job description, what are their duties and responsibilities, and how does that mesh with our mission statement as a city providing services to our citizens?
Councilman DeVliet?
I think, we've got option A, option B. You could look at both options. You've got city engineer is what mainly has been the discussion about. You would have different job description for a city engineer under option A than you would have under option B. I think is what we're trying to eliminate a little bit here is writing all these job descriptions for positions we may not even fill or may not even look at. Look at a basic plan, basic structure, then you write the job descriptions. And I know previously, since I've been on the council, I think we've operated both under these option B has been most recently. We operated under option A at one point in time, or basic similarity to option A. So I don't know. I think staff is making a recommendation. The Fersman report looked at this, made a recommendation. So I don't know what the why we're delaying this or to make a decision on moving forward.
Charlene, I hate to put you on the spot again, but can you tell me what the procedure is from here?
Well, I think that it is exactly that. I'm looking for some directions before we spend a lot of time trying to write job descriptions for positions. I mean, as Councilmember DeBleek said, if we have no intention of going in the route of option A, there doesn't seem to be a lot of time well spent writing that job description. What in option A the community services director would do would be responsible for the oversight and supervision of planning and development, public works, facilities maintenance, wastewater treatment, engineering, and engineering services. That's what the person would be responsible for. And in that scenario, the city engineer, rather than being a department director position, would be essentially a mid-level first-line supervisory position. They would be doing more of the engineering-specific work, supervising the engineering technicians and surveyor, and that would allow us, ideally, to contract out less of the engineering work than we have been contracting out currently.
Are either of these in the 2014 budget?
What we have budgeted for in the 2014 budget is an engineering position, an assistant engineering position. There would be sufficient dollars to structure that in any way.
Councilman Christensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I've looked at both of these options several times, and it appears to me that it's centralizing power and making more top-heavy government. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. What are we doing and why are we doing it? Mr. Dockin always brings that up. I think what we have, I know what we have works. It's worked for the entire time I've been on the council. I would prefer to see the same structure we have, only hiring a city engineer, giving him an assistant, and getting that survey technician in that department so they can get up and running and keep the city going. The city engineer, we had an engineer and an assistant, and Mel did a lot of engineering. He also ran all these departments. He had an assistant engineer that helped him. By the time the engineer decides to retire or move on, we've got someone that can step into it. We'd have to go out into the public and we can hire an assistant engineer and move up the present assistant engineer into the engineering department. I'm not in favor of either one of these. I don't like top-heavy government, and I don't like centralized power. I also noticed that I was reading the city administrator's responsibilities and duties, and a lot of them would be going to this HR director and the community services director. So then what do we do with the president administrator? Do we renegotiate the contract, or because some of those duties are flowing down to those two people. But I would prefer to leave our structure the way it is. We've had it for years. It works. I don't know why we're in. I personally feel like we were bullied into this, this organizational restructuring study. We've got these outside forces within the city that are trying to run the city behind our backs, and I don't like it. And I know that what we have presently works, and I would be for keeping this structure and getting on with hiring the engineer and the assistant. Let's get that department up to speed. I mean, Curley's been running his tail off, and it's been over a year. Talked to him, and he said this is the first year in his 30-plus years that we haven't had an engineer on staff, and it's our fault. We need to get going here and move ahead without restructuring. I mean, both of these are going to entail major personnel changes. They look minor on here with the pluses and the minuses, but they're major ones. I say keep the same structure, get everybody back thinking what their job is and not worrying about whether or not they're going to have one.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yes. I would hope we would step back and look at the big picture. Work isn't being done like it was 20 years ago, nor is it going to be done like it was 10 years in the future. I think we've got some recommendations in front of us, and I think if you look at the complete organizational chart, option 1, we're not creating additional, that community service director would be in the same line as the police chief, the fire chief, if you look across. It's not taking work away from the city administrator. It is simply distributing the work flow across those lines. And I think that we should be brave enough to look at this and say, it's maybe time to do something different. It's maybe time to have faith, to look forward, to have some trust. The city engineer, as it was stated in that organizational structure, would give them more time to do that. This is a team that we're looking at creating, people who work together every day, and it's putting them on the same level to work together. You're removing some of the supervision structures and stuff of those responsibilities and just moving some of that around. We're not creating new things. We're creating a more efficient way to get the work done. And I would hope that we'd be brave enough to think that we shouldn't be doing the same thing we did 20 years ago. We don't have the same workforce. We've made changes. We need to look forward. We need to do this. And you speak as if you were bullied into this. The council made a decision to do this and then stopped from doing it. You were not bullied into doing this. That might be your opinion, but I don't believe it's the opinion of this community, nor the people who participated in this study. And I think we ought to be brave enough to look at the things that were said in this study and say, hey, let's give this a chance. We need to change. We need to make some decisions, and we need to get going. And I think option A gives us some changes and gives us some positive things and a way for staff to work together and to look forward with it, to go forward. We need to be brave enough to do this.
Thank you, Councilman Allen.
Ms. Nelson, what efficiencies are you referring to that would be made?
Look across the line
I
here.
looked at the line.
Okay.
Specifically, what efficiencies would you see performed?
We're talking about cross-training staff. We're talking about doing some things differently, taking back the facilities, doing a better job with that. You're creating a line across where people work together. It's the same thing whether it's up and down or across. We're not creating some super structure with that. I think we just need to look at it.
Well, you're speaking in generalities, but specifically, what efficiencies would be changed? Currently, we have 2 building officials in town. We had a city engineer who could, I'm sure, give a pretty good evaluation on what facilities need repair.
You're creating efficiencies by allowing the city engineer to do engineering versus supervision.
But we had him doing the engineering work and all the other things before. So what are we really creating?
We don't have that anymore, do we?
No, we don't have it
No,
right
we
now,
don't.
but we do
So we
need
have
a
an
city engineer
opportunity
and
to do
assistant
that, and we've been talking about that. So I don't want to argue.
I don't
I
wanna
think we
argue
need to be brave enough to say the study was done, there's good things in there, lots of people made recommendations. I think we need to be brave enough to move forward.
Charlene, I may not have made myself clear. What is the procedure from here to, where does it go from this council, what they decide today? Where does it go from here?
Well, if the council makes a decision on how to move forward, we'll, as staff, bring those, we'll bring job descriptions back and we'll finalize those, and we would bring that process back to the council.
Okay, but that would have to go through the Labor Committee?
Well, or it can go through the council. I mean, it's how the council wants to choose. I mean, the council's chosen to look at this organizational study as a committee of the whole, essentially,
Thank you.
to this far.
Did I see somebody put their hand up down here? Councilman Doc?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Nelson, with all due respect, this is not about being brave. This is about doing the right thing on behalf of the citizens who elect us.
I agree with you 100%.
That's what it's about tonight.
Yes.
And we need to have research and facts that demonstrate that what we're going to do on.
And I think that document is in front of us also.
No, I don't think we have that documentation.
What do we need?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman
You know,
Anderson?
I think we're getting maybe bogged down in details. This is more conceptual. I mean, this is the idea. Do we want to go this direction or do we want to go that direction? And that's what we need to decide. And I am a little disappointed that we're reluctant, seemingly, some are reluctant to change anything. But if that's the will of the council, then that's the way we go. But let's not leave this hanging any longer. We need to decide. We've got positions to fill. We need to get some things done. So I think we need to decide. Do we want to go option A? We want to go option B? What are we going to do?
Or option D,
What's that?
which is to remain the same, keep the structure the way it is. And
Isn't that essentially B?
no, B isn't. It is not the same as B is not this.
Do nothing, Ron?
Correct. Well, no, do nothing. We will hire an engineer, assistant engineer, survey technician. And with all due respect, Councilperson Nelson, your tenure of 8 months on the council has seen an empty engineering department. How do you know if it works or not?
With all due respect, I was on the Planning Commission for 6 years. I was on the City Council for 7.5 years. I've lived in this community for over 30 years. I was on the Charter Commission for almost 4 years. So with all due respect, I have been around. I have observed. I've done my homework. I do believe it is there.
Councilman Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have just a couple questions about when I was reading the options. I'm not sure how many, what changes this will make exactly, other than like if we add a couple of positions. But my question would be, Charlene, are we going to have the same department heads we had before, or will this restructure reduce the number of department heads?
Well, I think ultimately, if you look across here at option, at option 1, we would have the same number. If you look to the, well, we would have less department directors. We would have a community services director, and that position is recommended to be created outside of the bargaining unit. And then there would be, the remaining department directors would be the police chief, the fire chief, and then in the current situation, the city clerk and the finance director. The engineer would not be a department director level position. It would become essentially a first line supervisory position.
Okay, and my next question would be, we have 4 union contracts.
That is correct.
And we have management prerogatives, of course, by law. But I'm just wondering if we've discussed with our labor attorney, Mr. Madden, what effect this would have on our labor contracts and what we can do or can't do.
I have had discussions with Mr. Madden, and he believes that we can, again, with our management prerogatives, we can restructure to create a division and change the positions.
I mean, I haven't researched it, but I mean, that's
his
the issue
that
is
is his,
what's a management prerogative and what.
That is his general view.
Okay.
Mayor Yanis.
Thank you.
I probably didn't do a good job answering the question that Mr. Amon asked me, so I would defer. I would ask Charlene, how do you see efficiencies being created with option A?
Well, I think if we go back to option A here, and sorry, go back. We'll have to flip the charts, and I apologize for having to flip the charts around. But if you go back to option A, some of the efficiencies that will be created is by having individuals that are working at the same level, they can go kind of quickly from one to another, and they're not having to go up different chains of command. Right now, when we have everything under the city engineer, we have a lot of things that have to kind of go up that ladder and back down. Essentially, this kind of creates people on the same playing field. I think another efficiency is in the facilities maintenance and however we structure that, but having an individual that is more dedicated to facilities maintenance and overseeing that for the organization as a whole would be more efficient. What we have right now is each department kind of essentially overseeing some of their own facilities. Is we have the fire chief who is responsible for fire suppression and fire prevention and fire education, but also somewhat responsible for the fire hall and managing projects that are occurring at the fire hall. And I don't know that that's the best use, for example, of the fire chief's time to be working on a light project or a roofing project for the fire department. And I think that happens also with our other facilities, with our park and rec facilities. And I think that has led to some of our deferred maintenance and some of our more reactive response to our facilities than a proactive response. So I think that would be one of the major efficiencies that we would gain in this structure.
Is there any further, Councilman Lee?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just efficiencies as far as cross-training individuals. I know the report talked about cross-training waste treatment plant people.
Yeah, that is a recommendation of the report.
And facilities people to be able to plow snow and do some of those type of functions. So I can see under option, the option A, I think it's probably easier to accomplish some of those tasks than those cross-training versus option B. So.
Yeah, and that is a recommendation of the report, to do more cross-training across our departments of staff. And I think that's a good recommendation.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Yeah, on this report, page 9, it says create facilities maintenance supervisor. No one is currently coordinating the maintenance and upkeep of the city's 12 maintenance facilities. That's right, because we don't have a city engineer, we don't have an assistant city engineer. It warrants as designating a person to coordinate the contracts, the routine maintenance, development. This was all done when we had a city engineer and assistant engineer before. I don't know if we were negligent on not doing that in the past, but if I recall, when things needed to get done, they'd come to committee and they'd make recommendations to us on maintenance issues. It seems to me like we're creating another position for doing something that we're already doing. I don't understand it. Some of these issues here involves working with full staff and the city administrator. But by creating this new position, you are eliminating and giving more power to this individual, whoever it is, to take care of those problems where normally it was done by the city administrator and the city engineering staff. What are we changing here? Another position, to create a new position? The job was being done before. We haven't had one now for quite a while. But again, I just think, the whole procedure of this thing is a little, if I make a decision to hire somebody, before I hire somebody, let's say a welder, I need to know what type of work that person will do. How am I going to keep them busy, and what, to put in their full 40 hours a week. I need to come up with a plan of how I'm going to keep them busy and what type of work are we going to be doing, and be specific to see if it warrants me hiring a new individual. We haven't had any documentation on that other than just charts and graphs and recommendations. Nothing specific as to detailed information as to what that person will be responsible, and if that person is going to be created to do that job, whose job, who's doing it now? Somebody's doing it. Our city isn't falling apart. And in this study, it says that the city of Willmar and the residents are happy with these services that are being provided. So the level of service and the cost. I'm really confused. It doesn't seem to be adding anything than a new position that was already being done before in the past. I'm repeating myself. I'll be quiet.
Councilmember Nelson, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to clarify again, just the thought process of the work is getting done. but we're looking to create efficiencies. We're looking to create different ways of doing things. We're talking about asking our staff, we've cut on staff, we haven't rehired, we're asking them to do things differently. That piece that you're talking about there, I think, would help to create that. It allows people not to have to make a phone call or 6 phone calls when something doesn't work. They can make 1 call. There's a way to work together versus all of those things. I think you're I just don't understand why we don't have some faith here to do this. I think Charlene has explained some of the efficiencies that she sees. I think the efficiencies are there by making some changes. I think we need to try. We're not hiring someone tomorrow. We will create a job description. There will be things to be done. We're going to distribute the work differently. That's part of what organizational changes do. And I think we have to do that to look at how we're going to operate differently 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And again, I'll say, we need to be brave enough to look at this. I hope that we will go forward with this tonight and have some faith and
I put this,
try it.
Charlene, is it imperative that we make a decision on either option A or option B here tonight?
Well, I think again, if there's additional information that is needed, I will certainly provide that additional information, but we are looking for some, if we want to keep doing what we have done before, then that's the direction we will go, and we won't spend time developing job descriptions or doing that. If there's a desire to look more fully at another option, then we'll spend more time and invest more time in all of those things. I mean, that's the direction I'm trying to get here.
And I don't know if you'd be the right one to ask this or not, but is there enough work to do year-round for the engineer?
Yes,
There is.
yes.
Thank you. That's all I have. Further questions?
Well, just one other comment. The city engineer should be in charge of public works. That's it. He should be in charge. He or she should be in charge. I don't care who it is. They are better positioned to understand operations. A city engineer can carry out, talk about them donating the city, or the city engineer would have more time to devote to engineering services. The team of the city engineer and the assistant city engineer is the team that handles those departments. I've never had a complaint. I've never had a complaint from any constituent.
Councilman
regard.
Johnson, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Other question that I have looking at this, Charlene, is and it follows up on one of my prior ones, is if we're going to have a change in the number of department heads. Right now, current city ordinances and the charter require that the council approve that. And I guess I would oppose any change that changes that without, in other words, making any department head changes without council approval, whatever plan we go with. And secondly, I guess I'm in favor of, I think the city needs an HR director. But I think we should explore sharing that position with the municipal utilities.
Thank you.
That's all I have right now.
Councilmember Nelson, did you have another point?
No, maybe I'll defer to Charlene again. Mr. Almond's comment about that the engineer is the only one who should be in charge of public works. I don't get that piece. And you're looking at supervision and versus
I think that was
job
one of,
assignments.
I think that's one of the things the consultant looked at. I mean, there's, and there are different models out there. Sometimes the public works director is an engineer. Sometimes the public works director is not an engineer and still supervises engineering. But has the, I think it can be done both ways. I've worked in organizations that have done it both ways. when you have somebody who is actually the Public Works Director, they're going to spend more of their time doing supervision, training, and management than they are engineering them, and that's just kind of the nature of it. And so if that is the scenario that the council wants to return to, then I would strongly recommend that the assistant engineer position be restored. That position hasn't been with the city for over 2 years, and without that position, it's very difficult for the engineer to supervise the entire department, which is a very large department, and spend any significant amount of time doing actual engineering. One tends to get shorted for the other.
So if we, excuse me, may I continue? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Is that all right? Okay. So if we go to that model, we're adding how many staff?
If we go to that model, we would be adding one additional staff, which would be the assistant engineer position.
Okay.
That would need to be restored. The engineering tech position is currently filled by a contract. I would recommend that we restore that position as well, but we have essentially filled it by contract, so it would be budget neutral.
Councilmember Christensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, Willmar's a population of 20,000. We aren't a huge city. We don't need a complex flow chart for our organization. We don't need top-heavy government. We need more worker bees than we do office people. And I still maintain the flow chart that we have presently has worked for my entire term on the city council, which is 18-plus years. Prior to that, our city engineer handled all these departments below, which is community services director on here, including building inspections, because they all relate to the engineering department. They all have questions. All of their paperwork has to go through him, whether it's planning, zoning, wastewater treatment, the facilities maintenance, and then, of course, all engineering. I don't see the need to make a big change here. It's been mentioned that we would be, under both of these scenarios, we're going to be +1 on personnel, but we'll be +2 on highly paid personnel. I don't believe that the engineer needs to report to a community services director. Yeah, I'm personally in favor of leaving the flow chart the way it is. It's working. We just need to fill our empty spots.
Councilman Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, we're starting to go around in a circle, but I hear that, I hear that, I hear that. It's working, but how much better could it be? You know, we don't even know. We don't get complaints. We're moving forward, but can we be better? That's what we should strive for. Status quo is not where we need to be. We need to be better. We need to be more efficient. We need to provide better service. Somewhere in here is the way to do that. But we're all starting to say the same things over and over and over again.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I would.
Was next.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Mr. Councilman DeBleek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's about time you looked at this side of the table. Under the option A, Charlene, and I realize we haven't wrote position descriptions or for community service director as of yet, but is community service director the proper title for that position? And couldn't that in fact also be under the job description, they would have to have engineering expertise as well as supervisory expertise?
It could be. I mean, you know, the name has been in the consultant's report. I mean, it was initially a director of external services. Then the consultant recommended community services director. I don't think the title is the particularly relevant piece of this. I think it's about, you know, having sort of an overall division that encompasses all of those functions that are listed below and kind of better coordinates the activities of those functions. And so you're looking for somebody who has a planning development background, engineering background. You're looking for somebody who has experience in those areas.
Yeah, that was going to be my point, is I I don't think the title of that position is necessarily, really, it's the structure, it's how it's set up. It may be, like you say, it may be an engineering type person or a supervisory type person to fill that box.
Correct.
May not, community service director is kind of.
Yeah, it may not, that may not be the
May
right,
not be the
that may
final
not be the
title
right
that we
title to
actually call
find.
that
Yeah, that
position.
may not be the right, that may not be the correct title. I think it's maybe better than the other Director of External Services, but it still may not be communicating what it's intended to communicate.
How do either of these options affect the city administrator?
Well, I think in both, I think in either option, again, some of it streamlines some of the things, and so it does streamline it, maybe frees up some of the city administrator's time or my time to do some more of the external services that I need to be doing and some of the community visioning and the bigger picture strategic planning things rather than some of the day-to-day things. But, again, either of these models can work. I think if we're to go back to option B, again, what has not been here for the last 2 years is an assistant engineer position. And if you go with option B, that position is strongly needed. And in both scenarios, the engineering tech position needs to be filled internally rather than with the contract position. We've tried the contract position. That was a direction of the council a year ago. We have tried that. It's not worked efficiently or effectively, and it's not saved us any dollars.
Are we looking for any type of a motion out of this?
That's up to the council.
Councilman Daca?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think before anything, the folks we need to be looking out for, as Councilmember Christensen indicated, that the special interest groups have had their input. The folks that haven't had their input are the members of the community, the 10,000 voters. And now both Redesign Minnesota, League of Minnesota Cities, the New Normal, all speak very highly of a program called Community Conversations. I think we need to sit down with citizens that want to come, whether we do it at one big meeting or we have 4 individual meetings. The citizens are going to want to know, how is this going to affect the delivery of services that we expect? I think that's the key, is holding some community conversations with the citizens, okay?
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Christensen?
Go ahead.
Oh, just a brief comment, we have a person that we went ahead with an organizational study. We wanted to. It's good to do that. Every business does that, to reorganize, to reconsider how we're doing things. We're doing things right, we're doing things wrong. But a study doesn't necessarily always mean you have to make change. Maybe we're working just fine the way we are. And I'm under the impression it was working just great. I've never had a complaint from any individual on staff and how the delivery of services has been performed. Not one. It's a recommendation, but it's his recommendations, or whose recommendations? He's interviewed a lot of people, talked with a lot of people, but I don't think there is much time spent with us, City Council. I think there is more time spent with other groups than there was with the City Council on this. Another topic I'd like to bring up is that we're talking about the needs of staff and delivering the service to our constituents. What about the needs of the City Council? Have we ever really reconsidered that? How much time do you have to prep before meetings? How much information do you need that we have to ask staff for? We have to go online ourselves. Do we need a chief of staff that reports to us?
Councilman, does this
Another option too.
Does this need to be brought up tomorrow night at your meeting?
Anything can be brought up anytime if the committee wishes.
Any further questions or comments?
Just a comment, sure. Once again, our job is to set policy on how the city delivers services to the paying public, the tax-paying citizens of Willmar. What we're looking at here is managing the managers that we have presently, or changing the management positions. And this study, as Mr. Amon stated earlier, says that a large percentage of the citizens of Willmar at least the ones he talked to, said that the services being delivered are great. It's working. Now, just because we change management doesn't mean it's going to change the delivery services. We're talking about efficiencies here. As far as I see, we're managing the efficiencies. I mean, we have a lot of faith in our department heads. I personally haven't asked them how they feel about it, but I'm sure they had some input to Mr. Fersman. But again, we're here to deliver services to the community, services that they desire and are willing to pay taxes for. And it's working. Sewer's working, water, streets getting cleaned with a new street sweeper. The lights are working. Snow's being plowed in the wintertime. I guess I haven't heard any complaints either, like Mr. Rahman said. And why change it why fix it if it isn't broke? I guess there's another way to put that, and that's what agendas are behind the changing these two, going to option A or B. I mean, I suspect there's some agendas present that are pushing these two, and one is consolidating power. One is making the department heads report to somebody other than the administrator. It just doesn't make sense to me. This doesn't make sense at all. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. What we got works, and we need to appreciate that. Let's just fill the engineering department. Let's get that up and running so we make sure that services are maintained here.
Mayor Yanis.
Go ahead, Council Member.
I don't know how long ago the council put a hiring freeze on, okay? You chose not to hire. Work has to change when you don't have as many staff to do that. You're asking the staff to do work differently, to create efficiencies. I believe that this structural change could help them. I believe that the staff want to get their work done. They want to work hard. They want to be more efficient. I think Charlene has addressed some of those things. And I think there is ways in this. And you're asking staff to do more. Your intention is to look at how do we cut government? How do we keep going? How do we do less? How do we do more for less? I think we have to have the faith that maybe it is broken. Maybe we can't continue to do things the way it's been done for the last 20 years, because right now it's not working. We've got lots of open spaces we haven't replaced. We're accusing people for a variety of things. Staff is looking over their shoulder all the time. Read the organizational chart. We need to believe what's in there. I think it is time for a change, and I think there's some opportunities in here to create efficiencies. And I do believe that it's time. It's time for us to make a decision and move forward.
Well, Councilmember Anderson.
I have a question for Ron, if I may. Looking at external services, is that what you're saying for external services? With the engineer, wastewater technician, environmental GIS surveyor, public works, and an assistant engineer, facilities man. That's for external services. That's what you're asking, I think. Am I right?
I didn't ask that, no.
But I mean, that's what you're asking for.
No, I'm asking to leave our flow chart as it is.
And how does this differ from where it is on external services?
Well, this is blue and white and yellow, and this is all black and white.
That's pretty.
No, seriously.
There's considerable difference here. Having that community services director.
No, we don't have that. Under option B.
This is option 2, which is B.
Well, B, go what we're looking at here today. That's where I'm a little, this one. Page 13, I don't know.
It's back here. Right there.
There we go. So if you look under, we have city engineer, under that wastewater, technicians, environmental manager, GIS, surveyor, public works, and then we would move the assistant engineer, facilities, maintenance up under the city engineer. I think that's what we have today. So I'm wondering if we can agree on option B for external services and move this forward.
What, if anything, would the council like to do with this?
I'd like to see us move forward with option A.
I'm sorry?
Agree. I would think we should move forward with the option A. That's, it's not adding anything for appreciable division. It's just reassigning some job duties, bringing some different people in. City administrator still has, he's got, 6, 7 people reporting to her. And it allows our engineering staff, engineering department to perform their works. I think it brings things, flatten things a little bit more. So I'm in favor of the option A.
Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'm going to make a motion. I'll make a motion that we leave our organizational chart as is, and that we hire a city engineer, and that we hire an assistant city engineer, and that we fill the vacant spot survey technician, and that we start discussions with the municipal utilities about sharing an HR position.
Second.
Would you care to read that back to us, Kevin?
I'll read it back.
Okay.
My motion is to keep our present organizational chart and hire a city engineer and hire an assistant city engineer and fill the vacant survey technician spot in the engineering department and start discussions with the municipal utilities on sharing an HR person. Pretty simple.
We have a motion and a second to do as Ron read. Any further discussion?
I don't have the organizational chart in front. I only have the others, the options with, so. I do not believe that staying status quo is the right thing to do by any means. I think the citizens of this community elect this city council to do what's best for this community. And I think that we need to be forward-looking. To stay with what we've had for 20 years doesn't speak much to our ability to change, our ability to adapt. And the whole world is out there doing that. And I will stick with my, I will vote no on this, and I'll stick with my option that I'd like to see us go forward with A.
Is this a roll call or?
I think, Mayor, just comment on this.
Roll call?
Standard motion, your call, but it's standard motion.
Okay. I'm sorry?
I'm going to say change and adaptability. We don't have that. We hired somebody to look at our structure, give us some recommendations. That has been done. To continue doing the same old thing is not prudent in my estimation.
Thank you. Councilman Anderson?
I think we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. I appreciate the fact that we want to move it forward, but we've only talked external services so far. We haven't even talked internal services, the HR, and how that might work out. I would suggest we look at external services first, make a motion there, and then go to internal services. I agree, we want to get some hiring done. We need to move forward, but let's be a little more organized and thoughtful.
So are you saying that we should have Councilman Christensen's motion without the HR added?
I would prefer to say, we other than a mention of HR, the internal services, which was another agenda item, we haven't really even talked about. Now, maybe we want to leave it the same, but we haven't even talked about it. So I would prefer to say, let's go with whatever. Option B seems to be what we have today. And then start our discussion on internal services. So I'm not interested in rolling all of this into one.
We have a motion on the table. And all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
No.
I think we'll do a roll call.
Councilmember Anderson.
No.
Christensen.
Aye.
Amon.
Aye.
Nelson.
No.
Johnson.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
No.
5 ayes, 3 nays.
Motion carries, and we will do as Councilman Christensen made the motion to keep things basically the same with the addition of the 2 engineering policies, and that would that include the HR?
It does, sir. It was not removed.
Okay, thank you.
It only said to do a study with, to work with the human, it didn't say hire one, it said to work with.
Work with,
Start
Yes.
discussions with the Willmar
Start
Municipal Utility.
discussions with the municipal utilities for an HR person.
And I've had those discussions with the municipal utility. I don't think they're ready for a fully shared position at this time.
So are we still going to look at the other side of this?
I'm sorry?
Well, he made a motion to have that. They aren't interested in doing that at this time, so are we going to look at the other side of the organizational study now?
We should, I would think. We should look at the internal. Is that what you're talking about?
I don't know. I'm asking a question.
Let's talk about the internal.
Maybe we need to talk about that, at least human resources, if utilities already said they can't do it.
As a point of order, I think we said we're going to leave everything the same with the exception, I don't want to paraphrase, leave things as they are with the exception of the HR thing. So I think that all got wrapped into one. We're done,
Okay.
I think.
I know.
I'm unclear if the intent is that we move forward with hiring an HR position or not. I mean, I don't think that's clear in the motion. The motion was to discuss with the utilities. That doesn't give me direction on whether to move forward with an HR
Share with the
position.
municipal
If the utilities are not interested in sharing the position or not interested in sharing it proportionately, I guess I'm looking for some direction from council.
Well, it was part of my motion, so I suggest we stick with it, and the motion passed, so.
What are you suggesting we do?
Ask Kevin, he knows what the motion meant. To
I
start,
understand, Councilmember Christian, I understand what the motion is. So I guess is the intent of the motion that we have discussions with the utilities? If the utilities do we move forward to hire a position, create a position, or we just discuss with the utilities, and does that lead to any action?
I said nothing about moving forward with hiring. I said to start discussions with the municipal utilities about an HR position. That's it. It's pretty simple.
As I understand, Charlene, that the HR position is in the budget, am I right?
And as I understand the motion, there's no action to be taken on that position, so we'll move forward.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would defer to Councilmember DeBleek, but where is the HR position right now within the MUC? Have they taken any action?
I think your city administrator is talking.
I have
to them.
spoken with
They have
utilities.
talked,
They are,
and I know they've discussed it, that they're not ready to move
They're not ready to move forward on the
forward
position
that
at the time.
position right now.
So they
at
haven't
this
moved
time.
forward?
No.
Okay. Well, this might be the impetus to start that.
Shall we move into the recommendations for the internal services? Shall we cover that?
I think it's done.
It's done.
I think that
Internal services?
Mr. Christensen's motion wants us to continue doing the same thing for the next 20 years, so I think we're done.
Move to adjourn.
Wait a minute, we have another item.
Other recommendations?
There were other recommendations in the study, such as a retreat and such, but I don't see that there's a sense of value in doing that. So I don't know that we need to move forward with an off-site retreat or a citywide survey. Those were other recommendations for discussion.
Well, if I may,
Go ahead.
I think a retreat is critical. look at us. We need some time to figure out what in the heck we're doing, what our roles and responsibilities are, how we're going to move the city forward, and I can't think of a better way to do it than to have a retreat where we can hash it out. So I think we need to have a retreat. It isn't going to be pleasant.
It can be.
Not with the mood I'm in right now.
No.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. Meeting is adjourned.